Okay, so basically, today we've been going through these last couple of webinars. We've been talking about introductory concepts with the Stratum interface, right? So we've been talking about how to essentially do some rudimentary drilling, sorting and filtering. We played a little bit with calculations last time as well. So we're gonna have to go through just a quick review of how we would build a calculation within a view, which is what we'll focus on today, is building simple math or simple business calculations, right? So that you can analyze the data, analyze the regular measures that you have within your view and be able to calculate it, do the necessary business calculations against those columns or measures of data. So basically, what we're looking at now is the interface. This is the version 7.3, the latest version. And if you're not on this version, and certainly is something available today, so you can contact me and we can provide that for you. Nevertheless, as you can see, we're gonna go ahead and run some views and go through a couple of scenarios here, and do a quick calculation review. So here I've got a pretty simple view here with this year and last year's sales. And, I've got a calculation here called VAR or variance, short for variance. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to delete that and we're going to recreate it, right? So now we've got basically just two regular measures, no calculations now within my view. So, one way to add a calculation would be to right click on your view, and you can add in a regular measure, or you can also add in a calculated measure item. So when you select that calculated measure item, it will open up the expression painter for you, essentially. So now you can write the calculation, right? You can name it, you can give it a format and give it a color if you wanted to fill the column of that particular calculation. So here on the left-hand side, you'll see some areas that we can look into. Such as like our measures, which would be this year and last year's sales. So for instance, if I wanted to go ahead and recreate that variance or a difference or whatever you want to call it, right, I would go ahead and select this year minus, which would be just a simple dash, and I would just go ahead and select last year's measure. So that's a variance. It's about as simple as it gets. And so defining that, you can go ahead and validate it if you want to see if it's a good calculation and see if it's valid. What else can I do before I get out of here? Well, essentially, I can give it a name. So up here in the caption expression, I can call it whatever I want, essentially, but I'll put in VAR, short abbreviation for the word variance. And then on the right-hand side here, we can give it a format. So we're doing money, so it'd probably be a good idea to show the data in a money type format. So something along those lines. And then if I wanted to fill, the calculation with another color so that it kind of stands out, I can go ahead and do that here as well. All right, so that's our variance calculation. Looks like I've checked all the boxes here. So let's go ahead and click OK. And voila, there it is. So now we've got our variance column. It stands out quite a bit with the fill color. It looks pretty good. So, in this case, I could sort on it. So if I wanted to sort on this column, I could sort in descending fashion. I could see the biggest gap. You can kind of treat that maybe as a growth indicator. So, obviously we've got some areas where they're kind of even, but, that's within context of their business, right? So you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt, if you will. How do we put this in context? Well, a variance percent might do that. So how would we build a variance percent, which might give us a little more context on, how we would maybe identify growth, right, within this particular, all my product brands. So, well, let's go ahead and right click and do what we did before, right? So we'll right click, add a calculated measure item. So we know we can do that. And, we get the menu again. So here we've got the same menu. And so we're going to go ahead and click on our menu here. And as you can see, we've got now 3 different objects or measures, if you will, within our measure items folder. So now we've got the ability to incorporate the variance into a calculation if we wanted to, which is exactly what we want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the variance calculation, and it brings the calculation in. And now I can go ahead and calculate against that. I think I clicked on it twice. There we go. And so, you know, variance percent would be the difference, or our variance, over or forward slash last year. And so I'm going to go through the same paces, right? I'm going to go ahead and give it a different name. This would probably be the appropriate name for that column. We can format it. So I would probably want to give this a percent. You can choose decibels or not. And then maybe fill it with the same color, or I can give it a different color, make it stand out a little bit more, you know, kind of up to you. So there you have it. You got the variance all over actual sales from last year. And we've got it named. We've got the fill color in there. We've got our format. So it looks like we've got everything we need. We're going to go ahead and click OK. And there it is. So now we've got our variance column. And as you can see, our demo data is pretty flat. Now, in your world, you're going to see lots of different variance percentages, right? So obviously I can then sort on this particular column here, and we can see some of our top growing product brands. So it looks pretty even right here at this level. Let's do some drilling. As we drill down and get more rows into the mix, then we can start seeing more areas of growth, right? We see New York Foods here bubbling up to the top at a 90%, 92% growth from last year. That's outstanding. Although the volumes aren't quite there, still though, that's obviously, you'd love to see business practically double. So that's what basically that's telling us here, is that, you know, the business is almost 100% of what it was last year. So here we got a 52% growth. We've got 38% growth. So now we know a little bit more context, right? Even though you know, these numbers tell me a story, it doesn't, you know, it kind of, now notwithstanding the volumes, it's basically just saying these are your top growth, you know, customers. Now, if we scroll down, we can see some of the bigger numbers. Obviously, Sumter is one of our bigger numbers on here for this particular product line. So we can see that they're significantly one of our top growth accounts as well. So being able to calculate, being able to read it and understand it, you know, those are the things that we want to concentrate on. How do I get things to stand out a little bit more on this? Well, you know, conditional formatting might be a good option here. You know, you can get things to pop out a little bit more. If I wanted to see how things would pop out here, one way I can do that is go into the properties. If I right click on that column header, I can go into the properties of that particular calculation. So the properties menu will give you basically the ability to reformat, rename it, change everything essentially. So you can kind of go in here. If you don't like the color, you can go ahead and obviously switch that very quickly, apply it, and now you've got, you know, obviously a different color fill here. If you don't like the format string, choose another one. You know, so these are all the different areas that you could change about this. You can change, even go back into the expression and change the actual calculation itself. So, which would be one thing I would want to do here. Maybe if I don't want to experience in the divide by zero errors, maybe I, you know, that's one thing to think about when you're doing division within the calculations is, you know, when we divide by zero, we essentially we'll get an ugly, you know, divide by zero error within the cell for that particular row. Not the best thing, and you know, that's one way we can avoid that is to use one of the Stratum viewer functions down here. So if I expand my viewer functions, there's some functions I could pursue, such as the divide by zero check. So if I click on that, it essentially just wants now a numerator and a denominator at this point. So it kind of goes in order. And so I pick my numerator first, it fills that in, and then my denominator again would be last year's sales. So real simple, easier actually, I think, than defining the calculation itself. You know, you're basically clicking 3 times essentially, no typing, pretty simple. So when I click OK, you know, those variance percents, those aren't going to change, right? It's the same calculation. But if I experience any divide by zero errors, which I don't have, again, demo data, it's too clean. But you'll definitely see it, I think. Once you get down to levels of detail, you'll see that potentially there were no sales for last year for a given combination of, you know, products and customers. So, you know, again, that'll, how do we get that to stick out a little bit more? Maybe I want to see areas of growth in a green cell, and maybe I want to see variance percents that are below 20% in a red or a cautionary yellow. How do I, you know, apply, now that we've defined these calculations, how do I apply some traffic lighting or some form of conditional formatting? Well, again, while we're in the properties menu of that calculation, you have that ability to go in and create that conditional format. If I go ahead and if you notice there in the conditional format area, if I select yes to that, it takes me to a global list of conditional formats that I can pop in here if I wanted to. Or I could, you know, do negatives in red. So if there was a negative variance percent, certainly I could, I would be able to see that very quickly, and you know that's been defined globally, and I can apply that very quickly. I don't think we have any negatives in red, so that doesn't really help us much in terms of, you know, seeing what it does, right? But that's one way to apply a conditional format, is using one of the global conditional formats where you can go in and apply that. Now, if I double click back on that, I can actually change it, right? So if I double click on it, I can select either another global conditional format, or I might want to create a custom one, because this one is clearly, you know, something, maybe if I don't have something global that fits my needs, well, then certainly I can go ahead and build one here. And I can call this, oh, I don't know, variance percent traffic light. Make sure you spell it right. Okay, so variance percent traffic light, and then now we can start filling in our rules here, right? So first thing I would want to do here is maybe anything less than 0, we'll go ahead and make that, we'll make it red. So it seems to have that already figured out there. Looks like it's going to change the font color to a red for that. The background color will remain white. So we'll have that, and then and it shows you a quick preview of that right here. Maybe I want to add another layer of logic here, and indeed I do. Anything less than a 0.2, 20%, right? We'll make that, oops, I went into, we'll make that and format that. We'll do the background in a yellow, faded yellow, right? Cautionary. And then here, let's redo this. Let's take the default, but we'll make the background red, almost like a red cautionary red thing. All right, so there's what we have so far. And then anything else for that matter is going to be a background color of a slightly greenish hue. And there we have it. So there's our traffic light. So again, if we have any variance percent that is less than 0, we've got the background showing up as a red. We've got a cautionary area in between 0 and 20%. And then everything else should be green above that. So that logic seems pretty good. Let's go ahead and, I could save this away as a global traffic light rule here, or condition. And so, but I won't do that now. I'm going to just go ahead and apply our new traffic light, and oh wow, I think it actually worked. How about that? Here we see that since we have no negatives, right, we do see clearly that there's a threshold that's being shown here in different colors. It's exactly what we wanted to see. So here we can see anything above 20% showing in green, and then obviously our cautionary area here between 20 and 0% variance is showing up as a yellow. So exactly what we wanted, and certainly as we drill to different areas, we can probably see different breakouts of these. Certainly we can drill on everything and see how this looks from a and then we start seeing some different areas here. We can use our arrows to scroll down. Oh, here we go. Here we have a negative growth situation that kind of popped out at us, didn't it? So here we can identify that pretty quickly here with our conditional formatting. That really kind of jumped out at us quite nicely. So yeah, I mean, that's those are some things that you can do there for having your calculations really kind of pop out a little bit more. Other things that you can do obviously is to add some indicators. So even to make this kind of seeing even further is I can put in some icons here that really make it jump out. Whether they're well, not those bars, those are cool. You can use those as well. Maybe we can play around with those, but here's our indicators. Maybe I want a big downward sign or downward indicator to show negative situations. And we can just do the same thing here, right? We can choose the neutral or cautionary, and then for upwardly good situations, here we can select the upward side green signal, right? So now we've not only changed the background of the area of the calculation, we've added indicators as well. So I think play around with those. That actually looked really good, and you'll be able to get some of the similar scenarios here where you can clearly have these areas of concern pop out at you, and they look great. I mean, you can use these in dashboards, and your executives will be able to see this and understand it very clearly. Okay, so that's kind of the thing on the status indicators. Also, creating these simple calculations, these simple business calculations, using also the ability to use these functions, and being able to use the Stratum viewer functions, right? As avoiding divide by zero errors as well. So taking it a step further, you can use these calculations with other objects within the view. One scenario might be an attribute field. There might be, for instance, a numeric field at the item level that you might want to incorporate into a calculation. An example might be you might have list price in your customer master, and you might want to extend that out by your quantity sold to give you a list price amount. Maybe obviously if you sell at discounts, then you'll be able to see and compare what your actual sales was versus the list price amount, and get some form of a discount, right? So how would we do that? Well, let's take a look at a view that we have that defined. So here we've got a discount analysis view. I'm going to go ahead and run that, and we can see that this view runs at product level here. It starts immediately at product level. We can see that all of our products, the long description, and then we have an attribute here called current list price. So this is being extracted and refreshed every night from the item master. And this is something that we can use to extend out our sales units for a month or year to date or whatever time frame that you deem necessary, right? So here we've got that attribute. How would I calculate this field against this one to give me that extended list price? Well, let's take a look at the calculation, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on the extended list price calculation, and we can see that essentially the expression is looking at and taking that attribute with an asterisk times, obviously, against the measure that we wanted to calculate it against. Now you'll see there's a function in here. It's val. And what that does is it actually turns that string into a numeric number so that you can do math against it. If we were to rid ourselves of that function, we probably will get an invalid scenario here. Oh, we do get a valid, but I don't think it will calculate properly. Let's try it. No, I guess you don't have to necessarily turn that and use that particular function. It looks like it's it may work in 7.3, obviously without the format. So that's basically 3,000 times 47. We could check that math real quick, right? So let's do 3,059 times 47. Should be 143,793. It's off probably because of the decimals. We're not showing decimals, so not bad. So yeah, so being able to do that, we can see that our list price is, and we can obviously have our actual sales amount there, and we can see indeed that there is a difference. There's our variance, or what we should call our discount. So let's go ahead and change that. We know how to do that now, right? And we'll go ahead and click on discount, and there's our discount. We can do a discount percent just like we did the variance percent, right? I won't go into that, but certainly you can create the discount and the discount percent and get an idea of some of your bigger discounts. Do some sorting on this. Same game, right? You can play the same games with the data. You can see that some of your products that you're discounting on, and as I drill to the sold to level, we can see that the discount extends to these particular accounts. Right, so pretty cool stuff. So for the meatloaf product, that is, at least, right? So that's how you would be able to calculate it against an attribute, and this is a really good example of an attribute that you would be able to calculate against and get that extended list price there. And then also is the ability to use time in a calculation. So if you have a view that you're using a time dimension, and you can actually use the time dimension in your calculations as well. So here I have a view, and with a calculation that's already defined, if I go into the calculation, we can see that essentially this calculation is taking my time dimension, the current year, and marrying that up and joining it with my measure of actual sales. And so that's basically a calculation that is going to always give you current year sales or year-to-date sales, right? So that's always going to give you that. And then obviously we can name it, format it, and that's essentially the way to calculate against using a time dimension within your calculation. So you can do the same concept for month-to-date sales or previous month sales or whatever it is that you would want to calculate there. So if I wanted to do like a current month sales, how would I do that? Well, I would go, actually, if you notice, I'm going into the actual hierarchies area of the expression builder now. So I'm looking for current month within my time dimension. And so here I've got my year-based, month-based time dimension, and I'm going into my members. And I'm going to select a member from a list. And it's going to be current month, but that's 3 years ago. So you want to make sure you get current month of I don't want that selected. So I'll just type in current, and that way we'll get just the current months. And that's the one we want for a current year, right? That way it will always show us current month sales for the current year. So, I grab that, I select it, it fills it in for me. Now I'm going to put a comma there, and I'm going to select that measure that we saw there for actual sales. So we have this year's sales, right? We already did that. Now we're going to select the actual sales measure to create and finish our current month sales. And I'm going to encapsulate this entire expression within parentheses. So that's basically how you would create a calculation against a time dimension member, in this case, current month, for our actual sales. So let's go ahead and don't forget to format it, give it some money, give it a name. I'll just say current month sales, and then we can validate if we want to. Yeah, looks good. So I'll click OK, and voila, there it is. So this, shows you how you can basically create this calculation using time as a dimension. And you can create these really simple calculations against the time dimension. And it kind of shields users from the time changing, specifically time ranges. If you wanted them to not get into that, if you wanted to just maybe supply a very simple data grid using time based calculations with your data, you can do it. Just so you know, it's available, and it's certainly something that you could pursue. And yeah, I mean, you can do all kinds of funky things, right? Other like things that you could look at, like for instance, cumulative percent of total. We've also got cumulative percent ABC classification. These are functions that were part of the Stratum viewer functions that will kind of give you a pretty good spin on the data. So take a look at some of these, play with them. And as you can see, you can use some of this to ABC classify some of your items, your customers, or whatever, however you want to segment out and look at the mix of your high gain customers or items and some of the areas where you need a little more help within the context of cumulative percent of total. So a lot of really interesting things to look at. Probably this thing needs to be turned around so that the A item is reversed, but yeah. So those are some cool things, some other functions that you can pursue. And then finally, don't forget that you got the help menu here in the upper right hand corner. And then you can pursue, excuse me, the online help. So once you get into the online help, you can do a quick search on the word calculation. And the first topic that comes up is creating calculated measured items. And you can kind of review some of the things we went through in terms of how you would calculate some of this stuff, and the different variances and different formats that you can play around with. So yeah, make sure you check that out. So that is it. I just want to open this up for any questions. If you have any questions, you can send them through chat, or you can unmute yourself, however you feel comfortable with. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, well, no more questions. No questions at all. I hope that this helped out. I hope you guys got what you needed from today's session. Certainly feel free to contact me if something pops up. Don't hesitate to ever contact me. You can reach me at adam.kurtz, Kurtz, at sylvan.com. Well, again, if there's no further questions or comments, I wanted to thank everyone again for their time. I hope you enjoyed today's session, and we will see you in another couple of weeks. So have a great rest of the week and a weekend. Talk to everyone. And